I wasn't snooping. I was looking for the grocery list. That's it. Just the damn grocery list. Her phone was on the counter. Screen lit up. FaceTime notification from a hotel I didn't recognize. I picked it up. Reflex. She hadn't closed the last window. There he was, shirtless, holding a mimosa, and her in a white robe, both of them smiling like they were in some twisted advertisement for betrayal. She kissed his shoulder, whispered something about getting back to the hot tub, and then she laughed. That laugh. The same one she used to make when I tickled her under the covers. The same one she gave our daughter when she learned to ride a bike. I dropped the phone. It clattered, screen still glowing on the tile. And in the silence that followed, I heard something I wasn't ready to admit. They weren't hiding. They never were. I just refused to see. She told me to stay home with the kids. Said she needed space and a self-care weekend with the girls. But my wife was on a honeymoon with my brother, while I reheated chicken nuggets and told my son his mom would be home soon. That was the moment I realized the woman I loved wasn't coming back, because she was never mine to begin with. If this cracked something open in you too, subscribe. This is where men finally speak, where we bleed out loud and heal together. Before all this, before the phone, the robe, the mimosa, the lies, I was just a guy named Daniel Wyatt, born in Billings, Montana, raised by a mechanic who believed a man's job was to keep the engine running, even if it was leaking oil and shaking the whole time. We weren't rich, but we were taught to be present. You didn't leave your post, not for storms, not for pain, not even when your hands bled. That's who I was. Not perfect, not loud, just dependable. The guy who always came back with the groceries, the gas filled, the faucet fixed. I met Emily at a 4th of July barbecue. She was in a navy sundress, laughing like the world had only just begun that morning. We started talking over potato salad. By sunset, I was holding her hand like I'd done it 100 times before. And from that night on, man, I believed in love, in partnership, in it's us against the world. She moved into my 2-bedroom house 6 months later. I put up shelves. She painted the kitchen yellow. We bought a dog, then a crib, and somewhere in between late-night diaper changes and Target runs, we became what people called solid. The couple who made it look easy, the kind of love others envied. People used to say, "Dan, you got lucky with her." And I'd smile, not because I thought they were wrong, but because I agreed. I worked double shifts sometimes, HVAC, then rideshare at night, missed a few birthdays, a few games, but I always came home. Always, because that's what a man does, right? He shows up, he provides, he protects, even when he's running on fumes and hasn't had a full night's sleep in 6 years. I remember the way she used to lean her head on my shoulder when she wanted something, the soft, knowing smile, like she already had the answer and just needed me to agree. She'd touch the back of my neck and say, "You're my calm," and I believed her. Even when it stopped feeling true. We had 2 kids, Liam and Gracie. Liam got my eyes. Gracie got her mother's fire, and I swore to myself every single day that no matter how tired I got, no matter how tight money was, no matter what storms came, I would never let my family feel unsafe. I was building a home, not a house. A home, and I thought we were in it together. There were moments, little flashes, where I'd look over at her from across the couch, and for just a second, I'd feel her slipping, like she wasn't in the room, even if her body was. But I'd ignore it. Call it stress, motherhood, burnout, because I believed in her more than I believed in my own instincts. And that's what haunts me most nights. Not the betrayal, not the lies, Not the brother with my blood and my wife's name on his lips. It's that I gave all of me. The man who stayed, the man who didn't run, the man who prayed over his family, to someone who had already packed her bags long before she told me to stay home with the kids. I wasn't perfect, but I was there. I was loyal. I was enough, just not for someone who never intended to stay. The signs were there. They weren't neon. They were whispers, faint, like a draft in a sealed room. But they were there, and I ignored them. Every one. It started with her phone. She used to leave it charging in the kitchen overnight. Suddenly, it was under her pillow. Then it was face down. Then it was password locked. Then there were apps I didn't recognize, hidden under folders with names like budgeting and calendar. I asked once, casually. She smiled. Said, just organizing things. Don't be paranoid. And I believed her, because that's what trust looks like, right? It looks like swallowing your gut instinct with a forced grin and telling yourself love has nothing to hide. She started saying his name again. Matt. My brother. Only this time, it was different. It wasn't Matt needs help moving. It was Matt's funny. Matt said the craziest thing. Matt understands what I mean. Once I walked in and she slammed her laptop shut like a teenager caught watching something she shouldn't. She laughed nervously. Said she was buying me a birthday gift. My birthday was 4 months away. I nodded, because men like me, we don't accuse. We hope harder. Intimacy slipped. It wasn't that we stopped. It's that she stopped being there, even when she was there. She'd turn away. Lights off. No talking. No kissing. Just going through the motions like she was fulfilling a chore. One night, I asked, "Are we okay?" She said, "I'm just tired." And that was the last time I asked. A buddy of mine, Ethan, pulled me aside at a cookout once. Said something felt off. Said he saw Emily and Matt talking too close. Said it looked more like a thing than a chat. I laughed it off. Said they're family. He didn't push, and I didn't listen. Because if I had listened, if I had really looked, I would have seen the way she smiled when Matt entered a room. I would have heard the switch in her voice, the guilt in her silence, the thunder behind her softest no. She stopped arguing with me. I know that sounds like peace, but it wasn't. It was detachment, disinterest, like she'd already decided I didn't matter enough to fight with. Apathy is quieter than hate, but it's 10 times more deadly. She took up journaling again, started leaving for long walks with her notebook. Once, she left it open. I saw one page, just one. It read, "I wish I felt alive again." No context. No explanation. Just that. And still, I stayed. Still, I held her at night like nothing was slipping through my fingers, because I thought maybe love was just a test, and maybe we were just tired, and maybe my job was to love harder when she softened into distance. I didn't want the truth. I wanted my version of her to be real, so I kept watering a dead flower, hoping it would remember how to bloom. It was a Friday, raining. Liam was sick with a cough. Gracie was coloring on the wall again. Emily had left early that morning, said she was heading to a women's retreat upstate. I packed her bags the night before, even tucked a little note into her makeup bag. "Come back rested. We miss you already." She never saw it. I found it days later, still folded, untouched. Around noon, Liam fell asleep on my chest. Gracie was curled up next to us, humming something off-key. I was reaching for the grocery list on the counter. That's all I was doing. Her phone was there, unlocked, open, bright. God, I wish it hadn't been. There was a photo on the screen, not from that day. It was saved in her favorites. Her, in a white robe, champagne glass in hand. And beside her, my brother, Matthew, shirtless, tanned, smiling like he'd won a game I never knew we were playing. They were on a balcony, the sea behind them. One read Capella Grande, Antigua, Antigua. She said she was going to Vermont. My hands started shaking. I thought it was anger. But it wasn't. It was grief in real time. Like my body had just been told it was no longer welcome in the life I built. I opened her texts. Not because I wanted to be right, but because some part of me still hoped I was wrong. It was all there. Matt. I can't believe we pulled this off. He really stayed home like you said. Emily. He's good at being the babysitter. Babysitter. They called me loyal to a fault. Emotionally slow. Predictable. They laughed about how I made dinner every night. About the Father's Day card I cried over. About how I once canceled a trip just to fix the damn dryer so she'd have warm towels. She wrote to him. He still kisses my forehead before bed. It's pathetic. I dropped the phone. It clattered across the tile. Woke Liam up. I kissed his head. Told him to go lay in his bed. He asked, "Where's Mommy?" And I couldn't answer. Because I didn't know anymore. I didn't know who she was, or what part of her had ever been real. An hour later, I called Matthew. No answer. I called again. Straight to voicemail. I sent a message. I know. No reply. Just silence. The kind that screams louder than any voice ever could. She didn't even come back on time. She extended her trip. Said the girls needed more bonding time. She walked in 3 days later. Like nothing had changed. Like she hadn't shattered the floorboards of my soul and danced on the splinters. I asked her, calmly, how was Vermont? She blinked, paused, said refreshing. I stared at her for a long time, waiting for a crack, a confession, a flicker of guilt. Instead, she looked past me and said, "The kids ate yet?" Later that night, I asked her directly, "Was it real? You and Matt?" She didn't flinch, didn't cry, didn't even deny it. She just said, "It's complicated." I asked her, "Why him?" She shrugged, said, "You were always safe, Daniel. He made me feel alive." Alive. Like the house I built, the life I poured into her, the family we raised, none of it mattered. I wanted to scream, wanted to tear the walls down with my fists. But I didn't. I just sat there, watching the woman I thought I'd grow old with pick pieces of me out of her teeth, like I was the spinach from lunch. She never apologized. Not once. She said I should have noticed sooner, that she was done pretending, that she deserved more than this prison, that I was the prison. Nobody said anything. Not my mother. Not her family. Not even my friends. The ones who weren't getting involved. Matt deleted his Instagram. Emily posted a photo of herself in a yoga class. 2 days later, caption, "Finally free." I stood in that kitchen, not as a man, not as a husband, just a ghost, watching his own funeral. I didn't yell, didn't throw plates, didn't pack a bag, or slam the door. I just stood there, like someone had unplugged me from the wall. And then I folded, not on the outside, not where people could see, just inside, where no one was looking, where the screams echo. The days that followed weren't even days. They were just static. I'd wake up and stare at the ceiling, then stare at the wall, then stare at the fridge, wondering what time it was. I'd feed the kids, do the laundry, drive them to school. I was functioning, but not present, not human, just a machine, wired for survival. I stopped eating, stopped shaving, stopped talking, unless I had to. People said I looked tired. One coworker, Tom, patted my back and said, "Cheer up, man. You're alive." Alive. Like that was the goal. At night, the house felt too loud in its silence. Gracie would ask, "When's Mommy coming home?" I'd say, "Soon," even though she was already in another man's arms, a man who used to sit across from me at Thanksgiving, carving turkey with my dad's knife. Liam stopped asking. He just got quiet. Started biting his nails again. Started sleeping in my bed. I remember one night, I sat in the car for 3 hours in the driveway, engine off, rain falling. I couldn't go in, not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't want to feel anymore. It hurt to walk through the door of a house I built, knowing it meant nothing to the person I built it for. I tried. God help me. I tried to win her back. I wrote her a letter, laid it on the kitchen table, poured everything into it. The history, the pain, the hope, the apology for things I didn't even do. She never opened it. I found it a week later. Coffee ring on the envelope. Still sealed. I made her favorite dinner one night. Chicken marsala. Candles. Clean shirt. Music low. She came home late. Looked at the table. Said, "You don't have to do this." Then walked right past it. Didn't even sit down. I bought her flowers. She tossed them in the trash the next morning. Didn't even look at me when she did it. Gracie pulled one out and put it in a glass of water. Said, "This one's still pretty, Daddy." I broke in the bathroom that night. Sat on the floor, fists in my mouth, trying not to wake the kids. People stopped calling. Guys I thought were brothers vanished. Some of them probably knew. Some didn't want to choose sides. Some just couldn't handle watching a man unravel slowly, quietly, without spectacle. Men don't get casseroles when they grieve. We get distance. My mom said, "You just need time." I nodded. Because what else was I supposed to say? She didn't ask about Matt. Didn't say his name, just pretended like none of it happened. Like family shame only exists if you give it a voice. I started Googling things at night. How long does betrayal hurt? Can you die from heartbreak? Signs of a nervous breakdown. I didn't want to die, but I didn't want to keep waking up, either. I'd watch old videos of us. Trips. Birthdays. Christmas mornings. I'd pause the screen when she smiled at me, looking for proof, for signs, for anything that said it was real, at least once. But even those pixels started to feel like strangers, like I was watching a movie where I thought I was the lead, but I was just the extra standing in the background of her life. I was her foundation, her fallback, her babysitter, her handyman, her placeholder. I gave her the version of love that builds a life, and she sold it for a weekend with someone who shares my DNA. I could have lived with the betrayal, not forgiven it, but survived it. What I couldn't live with was how happy she looked after. One afternoon, I picked Gracie up early from daycare. She'd spiked a fever. We stopped at the pharmacy, then at the corner diner for soup. She was quiet, leaning against me in the booth, flushed cheeks, her little hand in mine. Emily texted, said she was in a meeting, couldn't make it home yet. As we were leaving, I saw her, across the street, in a sundress, laughing, hand on Matthew's chest. They were standing outside a wine bar. She wore heels I hadn't seen before, new, gold, shiny. She kissed his cheek, took a selfie, then went inside with him like nothing existed outside that glass door. Gracie looked up at me and asked, "Why's Mommy with Uncle Matt?" I told her I didn't know, and that was the first honest thing I'd said out loud in weeks. That night, I couldn't sleep. My head was a war zone, but not angry, just exhausted. So I got up and opened her laptop. She always said I was too respectful to ever look. She was right. Until then, in her sent folder, an email to a friend, Haley, I think. Subject line, "I finally feel free." She wrote about how dead she felt in our marriage, how I was more of a roommate than a man, how Matthew reminded her what passion felt like. And then the line that ended it for me. "I don't regret anything. Daniel was safe, but I needed dangerous. Dangerous. That's what I'd become to myself." A danger to my peace, to my kids, to my soul. Because every day I stayed, I was choosing silence over self-worth. A week later, she asked if I could watch the kids while she recharged. Didn't say where. Didn't ask how I felt. Just assumed I'd say yes, because I always did. That was the last straw. Not the cheating. Not the lies. Not even the public humiliation. It was the assumption that I would keep playing my part while she wrote a new script without me. And that's when it hit me. She wasn't grieving the end. She was celebrating it. She didn't leave me because I failed. She left because she never really planned to stay. That was the last day I chased her. No more texts. No more dinners. No more trying to remind her of the man she once said yes to. I realized I didn't need her to remember. I needed me to. At first it was simple things. I folded all her clothes, put them in boxes, set them on the porch with a sticky note that said, "Pick up by Friday." She didn't. Matthew did. He didn't knock, didn't look in the window, just loaded her life into his car and drove off like he was running an errand. I didn't wave, didn't curse. I closed the blinds and put on coffee. I bought new bed sheets, not fancy, just mine. Repainted the bedroom wall, switched out the silverware she loved, started sleeping on the side I used to avoid because it was hers. People say healing is loud, but mine wasn't. It was early mornings, running when I didn't feel like it, holding a plank while the pain in my chest whispered, "Just give up." It was therapy, once a week. Sitting in a chair across from a woman who didn't flinch when I said things like, "I don't think I know what love is anymore." She just nodded and said, "Maybe now's the time to define it for yourself." I took the kids hiking. Just me and them. Liam found a frog. Gracie made me crown her queen of the forest. And for the first time in months, I laughed. Not politely, not bitterly, but deeply, the kind that starts in your ribs and reminds your body it's still alive. I started writing again, not to her, to me. Letters I'd never send, thoughts I'd never say out loud, pages that bled until the pain ran dry. I blocked her number. Not out of spite, but because healing requires silence, and I was done being the echo to someone else's selfishness. Matt tried to text me once. Just one word. "Sorry." I left it on read. Because closure doesn't come from people who break you. It comes from rebuilding what they left in ruins. I stopped checking her social media. Stopped checking mutual friends' pages. Stopped listening for her name in conversations I wasn't invited to. I didn't need to know how her life was going. I needed to reclaim mine. My therapist asked me what I wanted out of life. Now, I said, peace. She smiled. Said that's a good start. The gym helped. Not for the abs, but for the discipline. Every rep felt like reclaiming territory. Every drop of sweat was a reminder that my body still belonged to me, not her. Not Matt. Not the shame. Not the story I thought I had to keep living in. I took the kids on a weekend trip to Lake Tahoe. They skipped rocks. I watched the sky. Gracie said, "I like when it's just us." I nodded. "Me too, baby. Me too." She thought she left me broken, but what she left was a man who finally met himself in the silence she gave me. I still get sad sometimes. Still flinch at couples holding hands. Still hear her laugh in the back of my memory like a song I can't delete. But I don't ache anymore. Not like before. Now, it's just a scar. One I earned. One I survived. People think heartbreak makes you bitter. But that's not what it gave me. It gave me clarity. It stripped everything I thought I knew about love, loyalty, and family, and forced me to build my own definitions from the ground up. Lesson 1. Trust is sacred. Not because it makes you good, but because it makes you vulnerable. And when you give it to the wrong person, it becomes a weapon they can use from the inside. Next time, I'll wait longer, watch more closely. Listen to that quiet voice in my gut. I used to silence. Lesson 2. Silence doesn't always mean strength. Sometimes it means you're bleeding in a language no one else speaks. And if you don't learn to scream in your own defense, you'll keep whispering forgiveness to people who never asked for it. Lesson 3. Loyalty isn't weakness. I used to think being the steady one made me soft. That loving fully made me blind. But I see now, I wasn't weak. I was real. And real love doesn't beg. It doesn't grovel. It doesn't chase people who already had a running start. Lesson 4. Some betrayals aren't meant to be understood. You'll never make sense of how someone you would have died for could look you in the eye and lie. Some people don't want to be loved. They want to be worshipped. And when they realize you see their flaws, they call you boring. They call you safe. They call you the problem. Let them go. Don't make altars out of people who only ever saw you as a servant. And finally, I don't hate her. I don't love her either. I'm neutral. And that is what peace looks like. I didn't become cruel. I didn't become heartless. I just became a man who now knows the cost of handing over his soul to someone who wasn't hungry for love, but for control. If you're watching this, and your chest feels tight, if there's a knot in your throat you haven't been able to swallow in weeks, if you're sitting in a room full of people who love you, but you still feel like a ghost, I get it. I've been there. I've sat on the bathroom floor with the shower running just to drown out the sound of my own breath. I've screamed into a pillow because I was afraid my kids would hear me cry. I've begged God to make it stop, to rewind time, to wake me up from a life I no longer recognized. But brother, if you're hearing this, you're still here, still standing, still breathing. You're not broken. You're just healing in real time. Don't ever let anyone shame you for loving hard, for staying, for hoping. That wasn't weakness. That was your honor. Now it's time to give that loyalty to yourself. If this story felt like a mirror, if it cracked something open inside you you've kept buried for too long, type "I survived" in the comments. Don't do it for me. Do it for you. For the man who still deserves peace, still deserves love, still deserves truth. We don't suffer in silence here. We bleed out loud, and we heal together.